Well, you guys, I have a very special treat for you and for us all. That special treat is you don't have to listen to me too much longer. And we have a daughter in the faith. And really, Corey should be the one up here introducing because she has done so much more. That's true. She won't. I'm just going to have her come up. You guys, can you welcome Gracie Archuleta? Or is it Grace? I'm sorry. You're still Gracie to me. All right. Let me grab the mic for you. Hi.
Hi.
I'm just going to get out of your way and let you get started.
Okay.
I love her, so you should love her. And she is amazing. So I just want you to prepare yourself to receive. And I'm going to get out of the way.
Bye. Hi, everybody. I don't know, a lot of you. And what's weird is that if you didn't start coming here until after 2012, you probably don't know me, which is so weird. Well, first, I want to start out just by praying real quick. I know we've done a lot of prayer, but I need it. So I just want to pray real quick. Heavenly Father, God, I just thank you so much for this Sunday. I thank you for just your provision, God, your security, your love. I thank you for this opportunity today. And just pray that you would just be with us now, that you would speak through me, God, and that you would be sitting here with us. In Jesus' name. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, and I am going to be talking with this mic here instead of the fancy earpiece that Brad wanted me to because I'm not a speaker or teacher. I wouldn't know what to do with my hands if I had that earpiece on right now, so I'd rather just hold on to this like a security blanket. So I wanted to start off by just thanking you guys for having me here today, thanking Brad and Corey for allowing me to speak today. I came in to chat with them at this new building about a month ago and just was telling them what was going on with my life and just so many things. Got to pray for them. They got to pray for me, and then they asked me to come speak here today, which I was so excited about. But I really owe the last couple of years, probably the last 10 years of what's happened in my life, of the path and the journey that I've been on to Antioch, and I owe so much to them. I know for sure that I would have a completely different story now if it wasn't for them and if it wasn't for this church and if it wasn't for the deep, deep, deep well that they helped me to dig. I don't think if I would have done what I have done the last couple of years, I wouldn't have survived it for sure. There's no chance. And because I needed for what I walked through with God, for the path that He took me on, I needed a deep, 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 deep well to dig from before anything got poured back in for a while. So I just want to thank you both. Obviously, you know that I love you, and I would be not here. Thank you. Okay, so for those of you, actually, can I have someone give me another water? Because in the 30 seconds since Brad gave me one, I lost it. So thanks. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Gracie. I am here to, again, not to teach. Brad's an amazing teacher and speaker. I'm here more to give my testimony today. Thank you so much. And just tell you guys where I've been and encourage you guys with just the journey that God has taken me on in the last couple of years. And that really starts here. That really started with Antioch. I have been working in the music industry now in Hollywood. I live and work in Hollywood for the last 5 or 6 years. And I was sent off to do that from Antioch. I left here in 2012 to go move to LA after praying with Papa D and for him telling me it was okay after me crying, saying it was probably not okay for me to move to Hollywood and work there for a while. And he assured me that it was fine, that God would be with me and that he would never leave me as I went out to do that and left this amazing home. So the first question I normally get when I tell people that I work in the music industry is them asking me if I went to school for that. and I did not. I came to Antioch because I was at UC Riverside, and I was going to school for some kind of degree so I could figure out eventually what I wanted to do and buy time. So I got a sociology degree and sociology and law and society. And then after that, I went off and did a master's program in Spain, which is a whole another testimony in itself. And I got back, and I was finishing my master's thesis, and I was doing an opening act for Antioch for Brad and Corey. And as I was doing both at the same time, I was like, I had always loved theater. I'd always been like a theater kid. I'd always done some kind of performance. And as I was kind of producing the opening act, I was like, this is like me. This is who I am. Like, I'm having a blast in this thesis. I'm dying. Like, I can't work by myself anymore. I love people. I need to try this thing. I need to give it a shot. And so basically, I went out to LA through a series of God's favor, which is, again, another story. I wish I could say all of God's favor that fell upon me leading into the amazing job that I've had for the past 5 years and that I just left recently. But God's favor is just awesome. Like, I shouldn't have gotten what I had at all and wasn't qualified. And God just like kept moving me up, kept promoting me, kept building me through my career. And eventually, after 2 jobs working in LA, I was approached by a woman in 2014, and she told me that she was looking for a day-to-day manager, which was at the time my dream job, and is like 1 in a million to get, for a female pop girl group that had 5 of them. And I was I was like overjoyed. I was so excited. Like, they were just starting out. They were just like, they hadn't really done a lot yet. They hadn't, it was like really exciting for me to be there at the beginning of this what seemed like was going to be really big. And so I took the job. I did not know what I was getting myself into by any means. And I really thought that I did. When I interviewed for the job, they asked me if I wanted to travel, and I was like, yeah, of course. I didn't know that would mean that I would spend the next year not in an apartment, like not having an apartment and living on the road in tour buses and on planes and being exhausted and sick all the time. I left this office job that I was at previously, and I started on with this one, and I thought like, oh, this is gonna be like another office job, but I'm just gonna like have some relationships with these 5 girls. They were all teenagers at the time. I'm gonna coordinate stuff. Like, I had this idea in my head of what it was gonna be, and the first week that I started, that was not what was happening at all. The first week, I was at studios till 2 a.m. I was at photo shoots. They had me running all around the city. And I remember at the end of the first week, I was just talking with my sister about this the other day. And the end of that first week, I just sobbed. Like, I was just like a wreck. And I just like hyperventilating, crying, because 1, I was exhausted. 2, I was not cut out for this at all. I had no experience. They just threw me into the fire. And 4, I just realized my entire life just changed over, like it just completely changed overnight. And I had no idea that that's what was happening. So for the next year, from the end of 2014 until probably beginning of 2016, I moved out of my apartment, bought suitcases, and just lived on the road and lived with friends when I was back in LA, and just kind of lived this really cool, like what I thought was going to be a really cool, amazing life. And I think it's important just to note, like, the reason that I wanted to leave, the reason that I wanted to get into the music industry was not just that I loved entertainment. I felt like deep in my heart that God had put this within me to take what Corey had given to me to be able to mentor young girls within the music industry and within the entertainment industry, because I think we've all seen the cycle just from like child actors and child stars and seeing their lives just completely like torn down, ripped apart. And it like, there's something in me that broke over that. There's something in me that like really, really broke and felt like I can do this. I know I can do this. Like, if you give me the opportunity, I know I can do this. And so it felt to me like this was the fulfillment of like a mission, like my ministry. Like, even though I was getting paid for it, even though I was like, it felt like this was my missions field. And so I think that's important to note because it made it seem so much more than a job to me. It made it feel like every time somebody told me to quit or I felt like quitting, like I couldn't, because it felt like this was God's purpose and God's plan for me, which it was, but it's also like I've learned was a very detrimental way to look at things at a certain point. So about a year, I stayed with them for a little over a year, and at the end of the year, they fired us. And it was, one, relieving. Like, I felt like, thank God I don't have to deal with 5 teenagers and their parents anymore. And thank God I can stay home for a second. And thank God I can breathe. And thank God I'm not sick anymore. And then on the other side, it was like rejection. Like, we were fired. And then they were honestly like my only friends, sadly to say, for like those 5 years. Not my only friends. I love you, Maritza. But they were the ones that I was like, had my whole life built around. And so it was like losing like your best friends. And then on top of that, it was also like, this was my dream. And it was this feeling of what do you do when your dream is fulfilled and gone? And it was like everything on my bucket list, everything that God had promised me, every prophecy that had ever gone over my life had happened. And it was like done. And I remember telling Corey later on, this was a serious thought in my head. I thought that I was going to die after that because I thought that God had fulfilled everything that he wanted to do in me, and that at some point I was just going to die because there were no more prophecies, there was no more promises to hold on to, there were no more dreams, there was nothing else that I wanted. And so I spent the next year in serious depression. And I was still working at this job, still trying to live in Hollywood and deal with all the inundation of pressure. And it's hard to explain what it's like to be in this, but I think that people maybe in politics have a similar feeling, that it feels like everything that you see that's going on in culture around you, like everything that you see that might seem scary or weird or like all of these things, that it feels like you're in the eye of that storm always, and it's like exhausting. And to feel spiritually what's going on in those places, it's like I just wanted to take a nap all the time. Like, it's truly exhausting. And it was just really hard because I just wanted to get out of the eye of the storm, and I didn't know if that was my time yet. I didn't know what. All I knew was I was sad. I didn't have any dreams left. I didn't have any goals left. I didn't have any vision left. So I spent that year really trying to figure out what I needed to do to get back with God, to figure out what I needed to do to get back to a good place with him and to feel connected and to have dreams. So I went to Hawaii by myself on like an eat, pray, love trip. I went to Hawaii a second time with Jenny and Brian Stavali, who I think a lot of you know, and thought that it would help me to meet John Bevere and have him tell me what was going on in my life and what I needed to do. And I joined another church, and then I joined another church, and then I tried small groups, and then I read books, and I tried everything. I tried hobbies. I took up tennis. I tried learning Spanish. Like, there were just so many things. I'm like, okay, I know I'm depressed. I'm just that kind of person. I have like that drive in me. Like, even if I don't know what to do, I have to do something. And for those of you who are into like the personality test, like Enneagram things that everybody's into right now, I'm getting a lot of nods. When I did Strength Finders, my number 1 was significance, which I think is the one ugly one out of all the strengths. It just means that you want to be significant. And then for the Enneagram, I'm an achiever, number 3. I've just learned this in the last week. And so in my mind, like, in order to get back to a good place with God, I just have to find what it's going to take. Like, I just have to find the right hobby. I have to find the right, combination of prayer and soaking and like being and meditating and running and walking and going to trips and finding all these things. And at the end of it, I remember just crying out to God and being like, I am trying everything. Like, I've tried everything, and I'm like fully done. I'm so exhausted. I also should say I spent a large part of that year binging on Netflix in bed and not wanting to get out of bed for a really long time, and then being like, you have to get out of bed. You have to get out of bed and read the Bible because that's what's going to help you feel better. So stop watching Gilmore Girls for 10 minutes and get out of bed. And so I finished, at the end of that year, I was able to, and through all of this, I was able to kind of look back and reflect on what I had learned in that first year of like, go, 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 and that first year of stop. Just like the contrast of the 2 years was just not, it was like going into hot and cold weather really fast and makes your like skin shock. So I got to reflect back on a little bit of what I had been thinking and what I had been going through and what I had learned and what I had experienced. And I really feel like, there's two things. One, I am an achiever, and when I went into doing this first job, not only was I going in to achieve what I felt was my ministry and to like win these girls for Christ, and if not that, at least I wanted to see them get through fame healthy and whole. And I felt like I failed. And two, I wanted to achieve in bringing them success, because that was part of my job too, was to keep things going and to make sure that they had achieved some kind of success. So at the end of the first year when I was with them, I remember, it wasn't even the end of the year, it was maybe the summer of 2015. And I remember they had their first radio single, and we had been at I had gone to 8 countries that year. I went to 30 states. I lived on a tour bus for a month and a half. I went to every award show you can think of, went to every celebrity party, and anything you can imagine, that's where I was. And I thought that it was going to be really cool to get to accompany these girls to all these things. And it wasn't like it was my success, to be honest. It was like I wasn't being I wasn't getting rich and famous off of this. So it was almost like I had a backseat to watch what was happening. And I remember going into these rooms and seeing these girls at the beginning of this journey and seeing them at what we were seeing as the peak of their career, and watching them plummet personally, watching them each plummet, watching myself plummet with them, because you're so attached to what they're doing. Going into these parties with a ton of celebrities and just knowing and feeling the emptiness in the room is haunting. And it was the success that we all everyone in this room has a dream, right? Some kind of dream that we're whether it's to run a nonprofit or to start a business or to be a mom or to be an Instagram model. I don't know what you guys want to do. So, but it's the pursuit of that goal. It just made me I started it pursuing Jesus. I started it pursuing what I felt was going to be a ministry for me. And I watched these girls pursue fame and pursue success, and me kind of get sucked into that too with them, because it's really, really, really hard not to. And being in all these rooms and not only feeling, it's not only emptiness, you guys, it wasn't just an emptiness, it was a deep, deep sadness from everybody. There is not one happy person in those rooms. And that feeling, it felt I don't know how to say this, but the mask had been taken off of life. What they tell you and what you're aiming for, any kind of success that you're aiming for, this was the peak of it, and it was sad. And it's almost how many times have we been told everything, King Solomon, everything is meaningless. How many times have we been told everything is meaningless without God, no matter your pursuit, but we still try. We still try. Whether, whatever it is that you want to do, it's really hard not to be distracted by a physical or a tangible end goal. And it was almost for me at that moment being there really is no end goal that's worth it. None. Besides the pursuit of Jesus and besides pursuing his kingdom, seeing the top of this and seeing how sad it was although it in your brain, it was feeling it in my soul. That there's nothing that you could pursue that's worth it, that is going to lead you to any more happiness than having Jesus in the first place. Nothing. And it was cool to witness, and it was also really scary. Really, really scary. Because at that point it was what do I want then? What do I want? What is there for me to do when there really is nothing for you to do? And as an achiever, I'm still even learning that now, that what is there for you to do? There's nothing. like, there's nothing. So I got like the next year to even after I've been in all these rooms, still try to achieve to get back to the place of God without just resting with him. Like, even after all of this, it's still hard not to have a tangible goal. Even after seeing all of this, it's still hard just to sit back and be like, God, are you going to heal me or what? Like, I don't know. I didn't know what to do except to do things. And anyways, it took me like, after that year, I finally started, through time with Brad and Corey, through time with lots and lots and lots of people. Like, I finally got to the place where I felt like I was motivated to start working again. And I had been working through this time, but I was not motivated at all. And I finally was in the place to start working again, but I was really torn about it, because all I could think was, if my job is to bring people success and fame, I don't want to do that, because all that really does is tear them apart. And I don't want that job anymore. And I prayed about it for a while, and I didn't know what else to do. I had no dreams left still. So I just was like, I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna keep going until I have some kind of other dream, until I know. And I talked to Corey about this so many times, like, I want to leave, but I don't know what to do. And so I just stayed there. And honestly, I'm glad that I did. I stayed there. I just left this company in May of this year. And so I stayed there. That was the end of 2016 until this year. And it was there, it had its ups and downs, you guys. Like, it had times where, like, I was in rooms with, like, my childhood idols. Like, Boyz II Men wasn't one of our clients, but I got to work on a tour with Boyz II Men and sing with them. And I thought that it was like now I can die. Like, now I'm dead. I got to, like, stand in on a photo, like, be Paula Abdul's stand-in. Everything, you guys, like, it was fun. Like, I had a really fun time. And then, like, this is just life. This is the mundane part. Until the end of last year, when I had told myself back a couple years ago that if I ever felt emotionally abused, mentally abused, because working with artists does that, like, it just happens. If I ever felt manipulated again, like, because I'm not going to allow, I knew that I wasn't going to ever allow myself to get to the place where it would take me over a year to get out of depression again. And so at the end of last year, I suddenly realized, like, I'm here again. Like, I'm here. And the day that I realized it, I was in New York, and I was crying like a big baby, and I called Brad, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have to go. Like, I have to leave, because I'm back there again, and I don't want to be here. And it started a new, it's almost like that day, for whatever it was and that purpose and that time, that day, I physically felt the grace leave me to do that, to continue with what I was, I felt it come off of me. And it was after that I was just like, I kind of took on this attitude where I was like, who cares? Like, I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna keep going. Like, I was really sad, but at the same time, it was like all of the things that I used to, like, my heart used to jump at when, like, I would get a call at midnight to say, like, did you do this? Did you do these things? And my heart would jump. I'd just turn over and ignore it. Like, I all of a sudden was like, what's the point? You know, like, this isn't real life, you guys. Come on, it's not brain surgery. And it kind of, like, all of a sudden, like, sounds crazy, but, like, the sane part of my brain turned on to, like, take care of myself a little bit. And once I started to do that, and once I, like, just all of those inhibitions, all the fear, mostly fear, like, left me of doing a bad job or disappointing somebody in my work, or just all that. Once all that fear was gone, I came back from Christmas break really trying to debate what I was going to do with work, and some crazy things happened because I had completely let go. And the first was I was at this meeting at Disney with a lot of their there was probably like 30 executives in the room, and it was me and 3 other people from my team. And there were some things being said that I didn't agree with. It was a lot of, like, I can't really get into it, but just things I didn't really agree with. And It was almost like I've always been outspoken and I'm not shy. Like I'm I've never had trouble giving my opinion, but it was almost like, and this used to happen to me a lot more. It's almost like God's words were coming out faster than I could think them. And I'm at this room with all these executives, and like I'm talking fast too. Like I'm talking really fast, and because it's almost like I can't, like I have, the words almost aren't even passing through my brain. They're just going straight out of my mouth. And it reminded me, like, because God used to give me this verse a lot. I think it's in Ezekiel when he says, like, I will put my words in your mouth. Like, is it like fear not, or you guys know. Anyways, God put his words in my mouth. and that used to happen to me a lot, and I left so rejuvenated and so on fire, like God did it again. Like none of those words were my words. None of those thoughts were my thoughts. Like it was almost like it's just like coming out of me. And it was super exciting. And then a couple weeks later, again, I'm still in the place where it's like, whatever, like, I'm not going to let the fear drive me anymore. I'm not going to let people control me anymore. I'm not going to let the pressure to perform or the pressure to succeed control me anymore. There was this girl that I had found that we were developing, a singer, and she was living in Mexico at the time, but she's from Venezuela. And her parents called us to say that they had run out of money. We were in the process of getting them started as an artist, getting her started as an artist, and there wasn't any money yet. They couldn't live here. They didn't have visas. And her parents called us to say, like, we don't have any money to keep going. We're gonna have to go back to Venezuela. And anybody who's familiar with the situation in Venezuela right now, they told us that they likely wouldn't be able to come back, and so her as an artist would probably be over. And so we hung up the phone, and me and my partner on the project, I just said, like, at this time, like, honestly, I was like, I don't want to leave. I still had this mentality of I'm not scared. And so I said, all I know to do is call an immigration lawyer and pray. And so we called an immigration lawyer, or we prayed first, and then we called the immigration lawyer. And the next day, we got a call. Mind you, we've been working to try to get a record deal for her for probably 3 months already. And the next day, we got a call from a major record label and a major entertainment lawyer saying, we want to sign her now. And that continued over the next month with every major label in the music industry calling us to meet with her, and then in a bidding war. And through this process, I was able to pray with her mom and pray with them. And this literally has nothing to do with me saying I'm praying. If I were still in the place of fearing everything and feeling that pressure to succeed, I would not have done this, because you're just working. And I remember praying with her, and she's just like sobbing on the phone, her mom. And she told me later on that when I prayed with her, she felt God come on her through the phone, and she went to go tell her husband, but she couldn't speak words. So she just touched his hands because she was hoping that he could feel through her touch whatever she was feeling, and that he did. And like, it was after she told me that and we had talked for a while, it was almost like that was my purpose, and I had been released to go. And it was, lots more things like that happened, but it was just watching. At that moment, it was watching what God could do when I could step out of the way, and watching what God can do when I let go of the fear of not succeeding, the fear of not performing well, the fear of not pleasing people, and letting go of all of that, which was hard in itself. I told God he would have to force that upon me, and he did. I wished at that point that I would have been able to listen to Papa D 7 or 8 years ago when he told me 17 times to stop doing this and to relax. And I kept telling him, okay, yeah, sure. But for some things that you have more trouble with, God just needs to physically attack you with it yourself. And so anyways, if there's this was just this last year that happened. I've since left the company just with God and with therapy and advice of other people, and just knowing that it was time for me to transition and move on to the next thing that God has for me. And it just shocked me how many verses I found after that of God's power, how many verses I found after that of what God can do. It's every morning as I was reading, they were popping out on the page to me, and how little I was able to do when I was working out of the fear and the pressure to succeed. And I think that now looking at that, it like has forced me to look back at like a wider scale on our culture and where we're at right now as a culture, and how it's not just me. I think that I'm a textbook case for it because I am the way that I am. But I think that it's everywhere. And we're almost pressured as like a millennial, I should say, but to be like an entrepreneur, to do something that like makes you stand out, to do something that like you feel is special, and to do something that you feel like other people will say makes you special. And all I can say to that is like, there's nothing outside of the pursuit of God that will ever fulfill you anymore. And it's been a really, really, really rough ride and so hard for me to learn. But like, if I could help anybody not have that, and not to have to learn that lesson, it would be so worth it, because I can feel it. I can feel the pressure that's on like our leaders and our pastors. Like I can feel the pressure that's on like our teachers, and I even have like school teachers have Instagram accounts for their school teacher accounts so that they can see all of the fun craft things that they're doing on the board. Let it go. Like, let it go. It doesn't lead to anything but like pressure and anxiety and stress. And I've seen the people that you guys are like see at the top, and they are riddled with stress and anxiety and manic episodes and riddled. So if anything, let it go. Let it go. That's all. Hi.
Are you good? Thank you so much for sharing. This table is entirely too large
It
for
is,
these
and I'm
chairs,
very short, so
right?
I'm just gonna...
Feel like very little children. Should we move the table, or do you like the table as your blanket?
Let's move the table.
Let's move the table?
Yeah.
Let's.
I just can barely see over it, so...
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for being willing to come and share some of your journey. And I just want to say, as the pastor of this church, I work very hard to craft messages. It's an art form, and I want to bring something that is as good as I can make it. But I am 100% confident that it is not a well-crafted message that changes people's lives. It's testimony. It's real life. It's walking through stuff, and that's part of why I wanted you to come and just share some life with us. Help us to remember what's going on outside of these walls. And so we've tried to be very intentional about inviting other voices to share with you guys, so that we can all grow from it. I wanted to ask a couple questions and get your thoughts on it. I'm trying to think of where to start. There's so many different things that you brought up that are incredibly important. Let me start with this question. Mm-hmm. If you were to start over, what would you do different?
I've thought about this before, and I should answer this two ways. One, yeah. I wouldn't have done it differently because I needed to experience. One, I think I did a lot for the people that I was working for, yeah, and in my ministry, but I needed to learn these lessons. And so I don't know that I would have done it differently because like I needed to learn things this way. Yeah. If I were healthy at the beginning, like yeah, if I didn't say healthy because I was healthy, but if I didn't have this vice, sort of say.
Well, and knowing what you know now.
And knowing what I know now,
yeah,
I probably would have calmed down a lot.
Yeah.
Not taken on so much of the burden that they try to put on you, because I think another point that I had wanted to make was that that the pressure wasn't put on me just by myself. Like it's definitely there from the outside. It's 100% told to me verbally daily. It's 100% like it was real. It's not just me with an invisible pressure on myself. So I think that I would have to go back and like decide, not be in fear of losing my job or losing the glamour of it all or losing the perks or just like really understanding that in order for me to do the job well, I had to be healthy. In order for me to be healthy, I had to say no a lot more than I did.
Yeah, that's good. You've mentioned multiple times, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you've mentioned the word fear a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, fear scripturally is not a great thing.
Yeah.
One of the most frequently repeated commands is, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Fear not. And perfect love casts out fear. So in some way, there was a lack of love, and that's an interesting idea to venture into. But I want you to talk a little bit about the fear, because I think the reality is you're touching upon a thing that I think a lot of people don't even realize, that fear is the thing that's driving them. Talk about the fear. How did you recognize it as fear? Did you know right away, or is it just now looking back that you see it was fear? What are some ways that you can find that so it doesn't have the power to drive you?
I think that like those verses I'm all very familiar with, and I think it's important to understand that even while I was doing all this stuff, I was still listening to worship music every day, still reading scripture, still praying. Like, you can go through all these things and be like walking with God and like not realize that a lot of these things are happening. And to me, like when I'm reading these verses of fear at the time, I was like, fear was taking the day head on. Fear was like not being afraid when people yelled at me. Fear was like not cowering from tough situations. And that's not where, like, I didn't have a problem with that kind of fear. So I'm looking at the verses thinking, I'm not afraid of anything. Like, I'm good on fear. And really, my fear was in disappointing people. My fear was not in confrontation. My fear was in letting somebody down. And my fear was in letting God down in the ministry that he had set before me. And I don't think I fully realized it until after the fact. But when I'm looking back at it, some things that I could have learned was that I was having like a physical reaction. Like daily, I'd say like my body is really tense. And it's stress that's coming from the fear of letting other people down. And every piece of stress that I was feeling, I think, was coming from fear. And I didn't mention this either, but I was put in the hospital twice in this time with, I developed an autoimmune disorder from stress. And like there's physical things that were happening to my body that were clear indications. And then the other side of it was honestly never wanting to have my phone away from me for more than like 4 seconds. Because I was afraid I would miss something and then somebody would be yelling at me, which they would. Like it wasn't like it wasn't one of those fears that's like unfounded. It wasn't a fear that was like where I'm just making it up. If I didn't answer my phone, I would get yelled at. Like I did, and those were real things, but it was the fear of the repercussions. And I think that if I were to, when people would tell me to like just let it go, like what I'm telling you guys, I would be like, that's not what the job says to do. My job is to do this, and I'm going to do a good job because that's what I've been called to do. Right. But in the process, I got lost in the fear of doing a good job.
Yeah. You said something that I just want to say again because it's so important. The fear of letting people down. And then you followed it with the fear of letting God down. Mm-hmm. And I think that actually impacts all of us a whole lot more than we're probably even aware of. And it's easy to sit here and rationalize and think through it, and because I can ask you, can you let God down? Is that even possible? Some of you who've been around for a while have probably heard me say, you can't let God down because you're not the one holding him up. but it's real. I mean, I could tell you as a pastor, I feel that. I don't want to disappoint God. I don't want to let him down because I wasn't available for enough people and I didn't do the message good enough, especially come Easter time. It's the most stressful. I didn't say everything perfect, and so there were probably people that God really wanted to save, but he wasn't able to because I didn't do the altar call just right. And I want you all to just take a moment before we move anywhere else and ask yourself, what am I doing in my life that is driven by a fear of letting someone down? What am I doing in my life that is driven by a fear of disappointing God, of letting God down? You can listen to us tell stories all day. I want you to change. So can you take 30 seconds of awkward silence and let's just ask. I'm just going to pray and ask for all of us. And God, is there any place in our lives where we're being driven by fear of letting you down or letting the people around us down? Can you reveal that to us now? All right, we'll continue to process that in a little bit, but talk to us a little bit about the balance between, you said you feel like you have this ministry, and you want to do it as well as you can possibly do it. Mm-hmm. And there's something very good about that. We're to do all things as unto the Lord. And so if I'm going to do anything, I should do it as though I'm doing it for God himself. Why would that mean anything less than doing it with excellence, with doing it with everything that you have, doing it with as much perfection as you can muster? I mean, if you knew that, I don't know, someone important to you was coming over to your house and you were making them dinner, you would want to make the nicest dinner you could make for them. You would open the door for them. You would greet them. You would do all of the things. So we want to do what we're doing with excellence. How do you balance that with not being driven by fear into accomplishments? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that the motivator is a big part of it. I was thinking about this as I was just like kind of processing through exactly which parts I wanted to share today. And I think when you're motivated by, like, when the reason that you're doing what you're doing is to, like, one, be with the Lord, to expand the kingdom. Yeah. Like when those are your motivating factors, I feel like there's this place where like God is like asking you, okay, now rest. Or now speak. Or now, but when you get sucked into either the outside pressures or the inside fears and you allow your motivator to either be a tangible goal or fear, I feel like that's when like you start to go out of whack, and that line is really fine.
Yeah. There's also this, you addressed early, this desire to seek fame, to be insta-famous, to have people know your name. And I think that is an incredibly strong, what do we want to call it? Idol for this generation. How do you address that? I mean, because the answer doesn't seem to be, well, just stop trying. Don't want to be the best you can be. Yeah. What's the answer to that? How do you address it?
I don't know. I think it's really, really tough because in that process, like say that you want, like you're a chef and you want a strong Instagram account so that other people will hire you. And,
Right.
you know, like for example, like that's your business. You want to be on social media. You need people to know who you are in order to make money. I honestly don't have all the answers yet because I think it's really, really, really tough to use social media in a healthy way.
Okay.
Like, I think that once you start getting into, once you start really getting into it, it's hard not to be sucked into the idea of once you get like a certain amount of likes or a certain amount of followers or people start recognizing you, for that just to not mean anything to you.
Yeah.
Because like there's a human part of us that is kind of like, well, either God's really using me right now and I really have his favor, or like, or you're doing it yourself. And I feel like honestly the only way to really address that kind of thing is to it's just keeping yourself in check, but also it's using social media in a healthy way and setting boundaries for yourself. I heard Lisa Bevere say this one time that like for her Instagram, she only sets like, she tries to only set the scheduler to post stuff and only interact like certain amounts of time. So that she doesn't have to read stuff and so it doesn't get like too much in her brain, because reading the positive stuff is just as bad as reading the negative stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I think it's about like using it as a tool. It's a dangerous tool, and that you have to use it within boundaries, like have boundaries for yourself, whatever those are.
Yeah. We walked with you through a bunch of the highs and lows of the seasons, which it was quite a roller coaster at times. But let me ask, what are some things you did when you found yourself in a bad place to get yourself out of that bad place? What are some things that you did that made a difference? And please, everyone hear this, because all of you will find yourself in bad places and in good places. So in that roller coaster, how did you find God in that? How did you connect?
So this was at times really, really, really hard, because there were moments where I was on flights at 4 a.m. in one city, go to sleep, we get back from an event at midnight, and then you have another 4 a.m. flight the next day, and sometimes I was like 5 days in a row. And so being that exhausted and having so little time, it felt like it was impossible for me to have a connection with God at times.
Yeah.
One thing that I would do to at least try to maintain was listening, like practical things, listening to messages, listening to worship, trying not to let anything else go into my brain that was negative at the time, because there was already so much negativity around me. Yeah. The other thing that I'm really, really bad at, but it would always help, is soaking.
Can you explain what soaking is in case anyone doesn't know?
Well, you go to Antioch, so you should know. But it's just like resting with God, like putting on music, whatever it is, like instrumental that like helps you get there. Mine is film scores. And knowing that like God is in the room with you and allowing yourself to sit there and just like basically rest your mind and just know that God's with you. Yeah. And sometimes God will speak, and sometimes I sit torturously trying to get myself to not think of things.
That's good.
But that, and then I'd say like the biggest thing, honestly, because I think of myself, I get caught up in internal processing. I'm like a natural internal processor, but by the time I externally process it, I'm saying gibberish. Like I'm realizing that when I actually go to like externally process what I've been saying internally to myself, sometimes for weeks, none of it even makes sense. It sounds I'm saying gibberish words. And like realizing that even though it's more comfortable for me to process internally, because this is really strange probably to say, but I actually am a pretty private person, that calling people and asking them and telling them what I'm going through and allowing them to speak into it, even though I know sometimes I have this like insecurity that I know what I'm thinking doesn't make sense, and I don't want other people to know that what I'm thinking doesn't make sense. Yeah. So it's just like it's really utilizing community, and I think that that's probably the biggest thing that has helped me and what I have used the least.
Yeah. That's interesting. And the reason that you've used it the least is because of
You
fear.
guys live really far.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, those phones at long distance, it just costs so much money. I only have 150 minutes on my phone account, and I already used up most of the minutes. So, does anyone remember when it cost less money to call long distance after 8 p.m. so you would have to wait till nighttime to call? So, okay, just, or you had your card and you had to call the number on the card and enter the account so that you could get. It was only 10 cents a minute. So good times.
Is that not the case
Goodness,
anymore?
No. So I just wanted to pull out something that you talked about. There was the girl group containing 5 members, and there was there was the more recent example. Yeah. And it's oversimplifies it, but unhealthy and healthy. Mm-hmm. In both of these, you worked very hard. Mm-hmm. In both cases, it's not like the healthy one, it's like, well, I'm just not going to work as hard. You still worked. Yeah. Incredible. I know some of the stories. You worked incredibly hard. Yeah. But it seems as though in the first case, you were doing your best. In the second case, you were doing your best. The main difference is in the first case, you were trusting your best. Mm-hmm. It's if I just do the best I could do, and if I keep doing this best, then it's going to work out. And in the second case, it was, well, let's do our best. Let's call the lawyers. Let's reach out to the faces. But let's first pray. Yeah. And I'm not going to trust our best. I'm going to trust God to come through with this and just leave it in his hands. Talk about that process of learning to trust and how that, it's easy to say it. How is it different to actually do it?
Well, I would even say that with the girl group, I thought that I was doing it sometimes. And I think that I really wanted to. Like, there wasn't like an ignorance to that by any means. Like, I really wanted to. I think that part of it was a learning curve. Yeah. And just like it being like my first, like being thrown in head first and being so, like such a spotlight on everything that I did, that I felt like I didn't have time to do anything but just keep going. Yeah. And really, I needed time to rest and see what God was doing. And as much as I wanted to do that, I like every time I tried, it was like there were a billion noises in my head. Yeah. And it's interesting, like before I started doing this, I was a cheer coach. In college, and I remember I was at a Christian school, and I remember one time I was doing devotions, and I was doing a bunch of other stuff that day, and I remember thinking in my head, like, I do not have time to prepare anything for them today. I'm just going to say something, and God clearly spoke to me and said, "You don't have time not to," and so I just stopped right there and rested and tried to see what God was saying. And for me, it takes me if I'm just sitting silent, it takes me a long time to hear from God. Yeah. Like a long time. So I knew that I was going to be sitting for a while. Yeah. And so I think it's the same thing with the first situation is I didn't have time not to, but I didn't listen to that. Yeah. And I felt like I had to just keep moving to answer to the powers that be. Yeah. Let me ask this last question, and I'm going to let you have kind of your last word of any last advice you'd give to everyone. But how did all of this tie into your identity, of you knowing who you were, trying to prove to yourself or to God who you were? Where did your identity come into play in all this? Yeah, so I think that there's a big difference between what you want to do and what you're actually doing. Because I absolutely understood that God, me being a daughter of Christ was my identity. And I would honestly try to keep myself in check a lot, because it is so easy to be swayed there, to let your identity be I roll with a certain, caliber of people, so my identity can be cooler, it's hard not to get sucked into that sometimes. and I would like tell myself, like try to just check myself always to be like, could I leave right now? Like, would I be comfortable leaving at this moment and be okay? And I would always say, I would always say yes to myself, but I don't think that was always true. And I think that that's evident in the fact that like I felt like I wanted to leave for a long time, and it took me over a year to actually do it. Yeah. Because it's so easy to say that like, yes, my identity is in Christ first. But it's so hard when you are like known for something, whether it's for being like a teacher or even a student. I think that can be a really strong identity sometimes, or, you know, all these different things. I think it's just really, it really is trying to keep yourself in check as much as possible. But the times when I would be reminded of it most, that I was a child of God first and foremost, is when I was in danger, or when I was in trouble. And I knew that I was about to fail at something. Like, it was then that I would all of a sudden realize again, that's my first identity, because like I can fail at this at any moment. Like, as hard as I try, I can still fail. And like, I know that I wanted my identity so badly to be, and my worth to be in him, because I knew that failure was just like one step away.
Yeah. All right. Last piece of advice you would have for everyone?
I don't know. I think that it's like, it's really easy to keep trying, even like I'm saying, like with identity, or with, you know, all these things that where I know in my head. Like, I grew up in a Christian school, I grew up in a Christian home. Like, there's like, my brain does think in a Christian way.
Right.
And so I feel like it's really important to have people in your life who are truly digging in, and to dig into those people who aren't allowing you to dig in. Because I think that I'm 100% one of those people that I don't like people to pry that much. But when people did, it helped me to realize that maybe my identity wasn't so much in Christ anymore, or maybe like I was acting out of fear. And I didn't always want to hear it, and I do have strong opinions, and I do bite back. Like, so.
Yes, you do.
So I know that's not easy for some people, but even the people that you're afraid of need it.
Yeah.
So it's like, and they want it. Like, I wanted somebody to tell me, you're doing this wrong. Even when I bit back, I'd be like, okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Because it's like, it takes those people, like you say so many times, it takes someone stabbing you in the front.
Yeah.
To know that, like, maybe even though I'm telling myself and telling other people that my identity is in Christ, it's not.
Yeah.
And that maybe even though I'm telling everybody and I'm telling myself that I'm fine, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, can we thank Grace for sharing?
Thank you.
I'm going to finish just with this last thought. You have the opportunity to be a child of God. And people say all the time, isn't everyone a child of God? No, we are all his offspring. But he gives you the opportunity to be adopted in, to become one with him. Just as the Father and Son and Spirit are one, we can be one with one another and one with them. With God in us and us in him. And "100 years from now, none of the accomplishments will matter one bit. None of you will be bragging in heaven about what you accomplished in this world. Whether you did amazing feats or you simply loved God all your days. Is there anything more important? Because we can chase after, and I want you all to hear this because I think all of us in here wants to be something more than we are right now in a bad way. We want to accomplish something greater. We want to be known for some accomplishment. And you could chase after accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment after fame after fame after fame. And I promise you, and talk to Grace, because she's been around it, it's never enough. They asked Warren Buffett, how much is enough money? And he said, $1 more. But it's always $1 more, and $1 more, and $1 more. You could be the greatest baseball player ever. And then there's always this worry of, I need to set the Hall of Fame record even higher, because eventually someone may come and take that from me. It's never enough. You will never find joy and completion in that. But you can find it in Christ, in knowing who he is in you and who you are in him. Because even if you had all of the accomplishments in this world and became the greatest, most gifted, talented person ever to live, what would it profit you for you to gain the entire world and yet lose your soul? Let's never forget the most important parts. And that's to stay connected to him and connected to one another. For real, not just in talk.